Hello, hello, hello. Hey guys, so what we're doing today is we're going to be talking a little bit about our bar models. I write a percent proportion. So you're going to see this, and then so for the first day we talked about this. The next day we're going to talk about this, and we're going to fill out this benchmark packet. So, okay, so we're going to work on this together. Then we're going to look at this. Next thing we're going to is just how to apply percent proportions, okay? Okay, so you'll want to start watching the videos again because that's going to become important. You can see that we're going to have an essential quiz, but that's the only quiz. And it's not going to be unit rates, it's going to be percent proportions, not 1A. So I'm not really sure why that one's in there. So it was an adjustment by somebody else that hasn't been fixed. Okay, so it'll be 2A that we'll take. Okay, and it'll be on percent proportions and percent equations. Okay, so you've got to be able to do those because if you can't do those, you can't pass the quiz. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so basically what we talked about in class was that we could break this up, that we need to recognize three things. We need to recognize the part, the whole, and the percent. Okay, we talked about in class that if we look, we're going to see that is always attached to the part, and the word of seems to always be attached to the whole, and then the percent is always attached to the percent, right? So when we look at it, we also need to understand that when we do this bar, that we are always talking about that this is the whole, right? Which this means it's 100%. And then how we break it up is up to us. Now, we talked about in class that you could break these. By default, you're going to break everything into 10% pieces, into 10 equal parts. So that means we're going to take this, right? And then we're going to label each part as 10%. That means we have to break up the whole into 10 equal sized pieces. So basically 30 divided by 10 is 3. So we're going to say each one of these parts is 3 because the whole is 30, right? And then they're asking us what is 40%. So that means we're going to look at 40%, right? So that's 10, 20, 30, 40%. What is 40% of 30? And that's going to be 12. So our answer is that 12% of 30. Okay, then we look at this next one. And again, we're going to label things first. So we're going to look and say, is always attached to the part, and of is always attached to the whole, and the percent is always attached to the percent, right? So we know that this is the part, and that this is the whole. So when we draw it, we're going to draw this as the whole, which is 100%, and this is the whole, which is 60. Okay. Now you'll notice that even when we do the proportion, that 100%, it's always there because that's the given, right? When we talk about percent, we're talking about the percent over 100, right? And then so how we break it up, and in class, most classes looked at it and said, well, I can do this a little simpler because I can break this into 5 equal sized pieces and say each one of these is 20%. Because 100 divided by 5 is 20. And if I add these together, I get 100%, right? So this is 100%. Now I have to break up 60 into 5 equal sized pieces, right? So if I do that, that means I'm going to have, this is going to be 12. Each one of these is 12. Well, 20% is just this one right here, right? This is 20%, so that's 12. So our answer is, it says, what is 20% of 20? We say 12 is 20% of 60. Good. And that's pretty much what we did. So when we did these, we looked at 50%. That's half of it, right? So you were supposed to break those up. Now, we did these in class, so I'm going to let you do this one on your own. So see if you can do it, and then I'll do it. So hit pause, do it, and let's see how you do. So, again, I'll come back to this if you need me to at the end, but we did this in class already, so I'm expecting you probably already have done this. So 35 is 50% of 40. Okay, because I'll explain it later, but that'll be on the extended part of this video. Okay, we did these all in class. You just had to fill it in. And really what I did was say, okay, go, and let's see how you do. So let's see. I mean, because part of this struggle is part of the growth, right? So you've seen how we did it. You know that we're always talking about part and percent and whole, right? And so if we were to look at that, then go ahead, label the parts, the percents, and the whole, fill in the spots in your notes, and go for it. So I'm going to hit pause. You should hit pause right now. And then what you should be doing is seeing if you can draw these bar models. That's the goal of it. That's what we did in class, is we drew out these bar models. Ready? Go. So hit pause, see what you do, and let's see if you can get them, if you understand it. Again, this is just a visual representation. We're not going to quiz you on this, and you can use this to check your answers. You can use this to understand more when we talk about percent increase or when we talk about some of the other stuff, but we're really not going to go in depth over that. So, hey, let's just make sure you understand percent. So see if you can do these, and let's go. Okay, so just so you can check yourself and make sure you're on the right track. First of all, make sure you're always labeling part, percent, and whole when you're looking at the problem, because learning how to do it now when it's simple is going to make it easier when it's hard. And when it gets hard, you really want to make sure you know which one's the part, which one's the whole, which one's the percent. Helps you know what you're looking for, helps you know what you found, helps you know where to put the parts. Okay? Okay, so you should get, for number 4, 7.5 is 25% of 30. And for number 5, 8 is 10% of 80. Now, many of you learned some simple ways to do it, but this is how we want you to do this paper on the bar models. This is how you do it. So you have a graphic representation. Okay, so now you're going to hit pause again, and you're going to do these two. Go. Okay, so if you did it right, it should look like this. Now, you could have chosen a couple ways. You could still stick to breaking everything up into 10% pieces, because if you broke that up, it would be a little harder. It'll make things a little more difficult, but that's okay, because you could have said, I'm going to break this into each one of these into 10% pieces, right? Because half of this would mean each one of these is 4.5, each little section, and 2 sections of 4.5 is 9. You could have done it like that, but a lot of students were moving towards, hey, I can break it into 20% pieces. And then if I look, 3 sets of 20% equals 60%, right? And same thing here. You could have broken into tens and made a half of one and figure out what your 5%. But really, what we're doing here is we're just saying, look, from here to here is 75%. Okay? And if that's 75%, then it's 3 of those 25% pieces. So 3 sets of 10 is 30. So your answer here would be 30 is 75% of 40. And your answer here would be that 27 is 60% of 45. That's your answer. Okay? Now look, again, we're just trying to give you an understanding of what percents is. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I want to move more towards the other ones. Now I gave you a couple other challenge ones and you had an assignment to do. Because really you want to know a couple other things that we don't have written here. So let's talk about that. So one of them that we talked about is, well, what is 150% of 70? Okay. So we're going to have to look at that because we got to think about, well, what is 100? So we're going to draw those bar models. Okay, so the difficult part about this is that if you look, if this is all the space you have, then you have to understand that you're going to break it up. But if, let's say we did have all the space we wanted, and we said this was 100%, right? Well, so then we just need to break that into half to get what 50% is. And then we're going to add that next part on another 50%, right? And the whole is 70. But what we want to know is, what is 150%? So when we look at that, we ought to be thinking to ourselves, this is going to be bigger because this is bigger than 100%. So it's going to be bigger than the original. And if you don't understand that, you should probably write that down somewhere. If it's over 100%, it's going to be bigger. And again, we're going to circle and say, this is our part, and this is our whole, and this is our percent, right? So we're still talking, we're going to be talking about 150%. Now, if we break 75 into half, then that means each one of these is going to be 35, which means this one also is 35. So we're basically adding 50% on, or adding 35. So that's going to be 70 plus the 35, which is 105. So our answer would be 135 is 150% of 70. Now you are going to have one more problem that's going to mess with your head a little bit, but I want it to. I want you to see if you can do it on your own, if you could think about what that must mean. So let's play with that. And so I'm going to stop here and move on to the next part, which might help you, okay? So we're going to move now into what we really want you to understand is how to do proportions. Okay, so now what we talked about was that you're going to always have part, whole, and percent, right? And so what I need you to understand is that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're always going to put certain things in certain places. So here we're always going to put the part. Here we're always going to put the whole. Here we're always going to put the percent. And you know what? Every time, you're going to put 100 right there. Every time. You could know that there's only three things you got to figure out. Now, we're going to be setting up proportions because this is where we want you to be. You need to be able to show the percent proportion. But if you can have this memorized, you can set it up like this every time. You may have learned another way in elementary school, but this is what we're going to test on, just like we wanted to see if you could write out a proportion to solve a problem, right? So when I look at this one, I'm going to circle the part, and I'm going to look and say, where is my part? And it looks to me, how many people were registered? So it says there in the community, there's about 28,500 eligible voters. That's our total. Okay, that's going to be our total, our whole, right? And they want us to find out the part. So this is the part, right? And the percent, well, that's going to be right here where they gave us the 67% of people were old enough to vote were registered. And they want to know how many were registered. So you got to be careful if it says how many were not, and they give you 67% were registered, then you got to figure out of that what percent are not. But if we look, we're going to just write it down, okay? So our part is we don't know. So we're just going to call that P. Our whole was 28,500. And the percent we're referencing is 67%. Now, if you could do this every time, you'll be safer, right? Now we just plug things into their place. We don't know the part, so we put P here. We know the whole is 28,500. And we know that the percent is 67. We know that this is always 100. Okay, and now set up the cross product equation. So now see if you could do the cross product equation. You could also solve for P, which might look really familiar, okay? But you could do the cross product equation with this. And so we're going to work with that first, and then some of you are going to be able to figure out how to solve for P. Because what's happening to P, it's being divided. How do you undo that? You multiply. Okay, so now let's look. If we do the cross product equation, write that out, okay? And then what are you going to do? You're going to divide both sides by 100. So you're going to multiply this out. Okay, and then you're going to actually, if you look at it, you're going to actually divide this whole thing by 100, right? Because you're going to divide both sides by 100. So you're going to get that the part equals 19,095. So your answer would be, in the community, there were 19,095 registered voters. That's your answer. Yep. You're just taking it, how many people were registered. You could say it as simple as there were 19,095 registered voters. There you go. Okay. Now we're going to look at this next part here. Again, we're going to use this table to give it, that gives us our percents, right? So what we have to do is look at the questions. So the questions here, right, are use the bar model. Model your answer using the bar model. I don't care if you use the bar model. I want you to use the proportion. You can use the bar model if it makes you feel warm and fuzzy to check, but the bottom line is we want you to use the proportion. So again, we're trying to find the part, right? They tell us over here that the whole is that shows how many, what percent of 345 donors there were. Okay. And they want us to know this first part, how many were type B. So I'm going to look over here and say, well, type B is 11%. So now I'm just going to say, my part, I don't know yet, right? All right, so I'm going to call that P. My whole was 345. The percent I'm looking for is 11%. So again, the number that always goes here is 100. And then the whole is 345. And it always goes part over whole equals percent over 100. The percent is 11. And I don't know the part. So again, I'm going to use a cross product equation because that's the safest and simplest way to do it if you're doing this. I'm going to tell you right now that the percent equation comes out of this, and it's because of the easiest way to do it. Okay? So what we're going to do is, but we're going to stay simple right now and just stay with cross product equation. So we're going to have 11 times 345 equals P times 100. And then you're going to solve. So go ahead and solve. Hit pause, solve. P equals 37.95. But we don't want to talk about 9.95 of a person, right? So we're going to round, right? And we're going to, it says right there, round to the nearest whole number if necessary, because we don't want to talk about part people, right? And so what we're going to do is say that's 38. There are 38 people with type B blood. The biggest thing we want to do is we want to understand what we just found, okay? So now they want to know here you do this one now since I've walked through you with these two, but you got to be careful. Let's see if you get stuck with the trap. Okay, there's a trap in this one. You have to be careful. Why don't you read that problem, circle the question, fill in the blanks, fill in the proportion. Let's see what you get. Go. Okay, that should have been your proportion right there. If you think about it, some of you are going, oh, 45 was type O, but they said how many are not type O. So if 45% are type O, 55% are not. So you have to use that. So now let's see what you come up with. So that would have been your cross product equation. And then you would look at that and say, well, so that means we have 190. Your answer would be 190 donors did not have type O. Okay, I mean that's about it, right? So if you watch this video at the beginning, you watch stuff that maybe you need to review notes, but really if you took notes in class, you probably skip forward to this part. So you probably spent like what, 8 minutes on the video. Now you figure out how many had less than 35 donors. How many blood types had less than 35 donors? In reality, you should already kind of know, right? If you're looking at what work we've already done, you've already got the justification. Now just prove it. You're hearing that word a lot, right? You're hearing that word a lot. Prove it. Because now we're talking about application of what we've been doing. We showed you how to solve. We showed you how to do fractions. We showed you how to do all that stuff in the first semester. Now we're asking you to apply it and prove it. Okay? That's the whole goal right now. Okay. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. So enjoy this, come with questions, and let's see what you do. Okay, bye.